Hi, I'm Spencer Christian. On this episode of Tracks Ahead, we'll visit a model railroad with a European theme, visit a literary critic and avid train rider, and journey into the woods of East Texas, where steam is still king. But first, every year, major attractions like the Grand Canyon and Mount Rushmore draw huge crowds. A lot of folks think those pale in comparison to a spectacular train layout in New Jersey.
Sometimes all you hear from a layout are train noises. Well, not here. This New Jersey attraction is different. This, all of this, and this, and this is Northlands.
In the heart of Northlands, and on the tour, people will pass through it 4 different times. We have our theater pipe organ. It's a 5-manual, partially Wurlitzer hybrid. These are organs that played in the 20s to support the silent films. It's more of an attraction than we thought it would be, and we have different professionals playing throughout the week. I'm also a professional musician. I play a couple days, and it's a pretty neat attraction. It's a pretty neat part of the place. People like it.
A layout this huge doesn't just happen overnight. It's more like a kind of evolution.
The history behind Northlands, my wife and I in 1972 bought a couple acres of land, few acres of land nearby, built a house, and the basement was for the trains. And over the next 18 years, we added 5 basements onto the side of the basement all the way out. And it used to take 80 men to run the old railroad. We used to open it 2 weekends a year to the public. Proceeds went to local charities. And from all of that, we learned how to do Northlands from the experience from that. So in 1990, we decided to tear it down, and we bought this land on Highway 202 here, designed and built the building, and started all over again.
Before this new version was built, all the plans were drawn up. Bruce says the key was having a solid plan, which included some major league raw numbers.
About 40,000 feet of track. There's a couple 100,000 pounds of plaster to make all the mountains and rock work. There's enough lumber inside the building to support everything to build about 42 large houses. We run currently about 115 trains at one time. That'll eventually grow to about 130. We only run probably about 1,300 cars. The amount of trees in Northlands is around a couple 100,000. They're not counted specifically. That's a rough guess. It's the lichen representation in the mountains, and then other trees are scratch built. There's a few thousand that are scratch built, and a lot of them are woodland scenic trees. With all levels and so forth, the building is a 52,000 square foot building. The layout for Northlands was every square inch was designed out completely before we started, and had a stack of papers about 4 feet high with all the design plans. There's a lifetime of work. Even though it looks finished, and basically it is finished, but there's a lifetime of work on major projects to be done in here. And if the finances are there, we hope to triple the building in the next year or 2. And then we'll have 3 different shows, and we'll go much higher so we can do the Swiss Alps and the Himalayas, things like that. The amount of people we get here in a given year to Northlands is somewhere between 125 and 150,000. Some years we've had more. Well, the control center, this is where we run the currently 115 trains from. And we have TV monitors on most of the system, plus all our meters and lights that tell us what's going on with the trains. Plus we have spotters walking around all the time.
Unlike a lot of layouts, the action here doesn't stop at the door.
Outside we have a terrific outdoor train ride with a 3/4 size train that's for big people as well as little, a 3-foot gauge. Leaves our station, goes through our tunnel, out along the river, back through the woods, over the big bridge, back to the station. It's a pretty neat little ride.
There are many reasons to come, and, according to Bruce, many reasons to spend some time just soaking it all in.
The breathtaking scenery is probably what catches most people. You know, the 3.5-story mountains, the big canyons. We have a lot of funny things that some of the purists may not like, but we have a toothpick farm, the world's only toothpick farm. We have a mile-high miniature golf course. We have Grandma's Pit, where they had to dig around her house to make this quarry because she wouldn't sell. We have a tremendous amount of industrial buildings, all scratch built. A lot of people are fascinated by the bridges. Some are 30 and 40 feet long in HO scale.
Just remember, as large as Northlands is, Bruce wants to make it still larger. Being a model railroader means that you can create any locale you want for your empire. Most people recreate old vanished railroads, but some prefer the compactness and scenery of Europe. Marcel Trautwein has recreated scenes from his youth.
The Wildwood Scenic Line still exists and is now part of the Grand Day Illusion mainline passenger service into the mountainous region.
Marcel Trautwein has always been interested in trains. This layout's been a work in progress since 1978.
Well, when I first bought the house, I saw this empty basement, and I already had in the back of my mind that I wanted to build a model railroad. I built other layouts before, but they were a lot smaller than this. This one here is actually permanent, built into the house. If I ever move, I cannot take this with me because it has a cycloramic backdrop, floor-to-ceiling scenery. The cycloramic means it's curved both ways. It's curved from the ceiling down to the wall, down to the floor, and then it's curved also in the corners, so it's like a concave effect as you're looking into the corners. As you see, there's no lines. I wanted to give it the illusion of depth.
He was born in Switzerland. He says that inspired this wonderful layout.
I had something about narrow gauge and small mining trains, and there's a lot of that over in Europe. So that reflects in my layout. As you can see, there's a lot of unusual things on the layout with small scale trains and mining operations, and it kind of brings back my childhood days.
And this, all of this, is from his imagination. But when you hear him tell the story, you almost feel like you know the people who live here in Little Switzerland and Bridgeport.
This is the highest point a tourist can go, and the view is absolutely breathtaking.
In the mountains, weather is always a worry. Same thing in his layout.
So the lights start dimming down, and then all of a sudden the lightning starts to flash, and then there's thunder in the background, and then you hear the rain. And basically you have a thunderstorm in the mountains.
For Marcel, a lot of the fun of building a layout comes from experimentation and trial and error, and ultimately success. He says people just getting started should try to do their best on their own, but if they just can't figure it out, or if they just plain don't have time, he can help. All this started with the help of Marcel. Stan Olander has had 3 layouts, but for this one, he wanted to go a step further.
I visited his layout. I was quite impressed. And I said, I really met quite a craftsman here. And we started discussing layouts, and he discussed the importance of building the benchwork right to start. And that was the secret of successful operation. So I decided he was the guy to do it, and looking at his layout, you could tell he's quite a craftsman.
He says the key is the benchwork, the actual construction that supports his wonderful layout, and that he built with Marcel.
We built very good benchwork with 1x4 lumber, 5x8 inch exterior plywood, 1/2 inch of homosote, and then cork road bed on top of that. So it's a very quiet operation, but the benchwork is very strong, so it's very stable, no warping the track. And then we soldered every rail joint and filed it down, and that makes for a smoother operation.
Attention to detail brings this layout to life. Stan has spent 9 months just building trees.
Well, a tree is very simple. Use economical ground green foam. You can blend your colors, but you put the foam in a bucket or a container, and you can see it's just a powdery foam. Then you take the polyfiber. I like black because you don't want to color it all. You know, if you don't cover the entire mass, the black of the interior of a tree looks black. So you kind of make a ball like that, irregular in shape, like a tree would be. Then you spray it with economical hairspray as an adhesive. Then you drop it in the ground foam and bounce it around and coat it completely. And there's a finished tree. Just that simple.
Stan figures it'll take another couple of years to complete his dream layout. He says it would not come true without the special help he got from Marcel Troutwine.
Oh, it cut the time in half, or maybe by a year. Less time to get the benchwork going, you know. That's the hard part, you know, the carpenter part of it. Now I'm at the stage, you know, when we got everything done, that it's the fun part, the scenery and populating the layout now with buildings and people and trees.
It's a feeling of accomplishment. It's a good feeling. I'm fulfilling a need for somebody. There's people that just don't have the time or the equipment, you know, the machines to build a layout, or they just don't have the knowledge because their specialty is in something else. This is where I fulfill a niche. As the years have passed, many unfortunate miners and loggers lost their lives, along with horses and mules, in avalanches or fell off the sides of the mountain, usually loaded down with logs and ore because of the slippery trails in the winter months.
For Marcel, one of the nice things about building a dream layout is that it's a dream that never really ends. There's always something new to create, to dream up, something new for the people who live in and around the world he made.
I take my hat off to all those men and women that endured the bitter winters and the damp, dreary darkness of the mines when life was simpler but hard and grueling.
The California Zephyr travels from Chicago all the way to the San Francisco Bay Area. It's the kind of trip that makes for wonderful stories and, in some cases, an entire book. Climb aboard with Henry Kisor, who has helped immortalize this train in print. We wouldn't want to neglect the great state of Texas in our look at railroading. After all, there was a whole class of locomotives named after the state. You'll still find steam in operation in Palestine, about halfway between Houston and Dallas.
This blustery East Texas landscape is the perfect setting for a ride on a steam locomotive tucked warm and dry inside a world of nostalgia and history. Hop aboard and experience a bit of Texas history. Ride 25 miles between Rusk and Palestine. While aboard, think about the fact that this historic ride is built on a line built by prisoners way back in the 1800s.
It was started in 1894 by the Texas prison system. They had an iron smelter in the prison in Rusk, and they built 5 miles out from the prison to get iron ore and wood to make the charcoal for their process. And then a few years later, it was extended another 5 miles to Maydale. Later on, it was extended to Palestine, but that was about 1909.
Prisoners are a part of recent history, too. In 1996 and 97, prison crews were put to work clearing brush from the tracks and restoring passenger coaches. But this railroad isn't for iron anymore. It's just for the fun of it.
Well, it winds through the East Texas piney woods. It's hilly and beautiful. We'd cross so many creeks. We've got almost a mile of trestles. We've got 24 bridges, and the longest one's a little over 1,100 feet. And it's a beautiful ride.
The operation is run by the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. They have steam locomotives that pull some impressive coaches.
Well, we have 4 operating locomotives. Number 201 is the oldest, built in 1901 for the Texas and Pacific. Got the 300, was an Army engine, built in 1917 for the Army, and it was later, after World War II, it was sold to the Tremont and Gulf Railroad, who also had this engine 400 built in 1917, and they ran on the same railroad before they came here. Then number 500 was built in 1911. It was a passenger engine for the Santa Fe. It's our largest locomotive that we run. And we have this engine behind me, the 610, which was built in 1927 for the Texas and Pacific. And of course, it's the largest and heaviest, but we don't operate it. But it's in pretty good shape.
Located just 150 miles from Houston and 120 miles from Dallas, it's a great getaway for rail fans in the area. These are the kind of classic trains that make you nostalgic for the golden age of train travel. In fact, if you just sit back, relax, and use your imagination, it's all here. It's the sort of thing that captures your attention and your sense of wonder. Talk to people like Natasha Bettis, a mechanical engineer by trade. She volunteers to keep it all rolling. You quickly find out that it's not just the passengers who are captivated.
There's something magical about steam. You take some fuel and some water, and under the right conditions, you get massive amounts of power. And it's amazing to me that 100 years ago they designed something like this with a piece of paper, a slide rule, and a pencil, and this right up here. And doing the work that I do as an engineer, I see that, you know, all the stuff that we do as technical people, we do with computers. And to me, you know, 100 years ago, this was rocket science. And it's amazing that a century later, they're still running and running well. I don't know that things that we would build today would still be operational 100 years from now.
It should be a comfort to know that no matter where you are, steam from a locomotive still fills the East Texas skies, and the lonesome whistle always calls you back to the past. The Zephyr is a train of legend. You can climb aboard at Chicago's historic Union Station and ride all the way to Oakland, California. It runs through some of the most gorgeous scenery America can dish up, from the Great Plains of America's heartland to the Rocky Mountain West. The train is the subject of a book by Henry Kisor called Zephyr, Tracking a Dream Across America. Henry's the book critic for the Chicago Sun-Times. He and his wife Debbie have come to know this train intimately and hop aboard whenever they can get away. This trip is just a quick run out to Glenwood Springs, Colorado and back, a great way to spend a long weekend. Reading Henry's book, you too come to know the train, the scenery, the crew, and the passengers.
Did I ever tell you about the time I went to Yellowstone?
You learn a lot about the people aboard because they reveal themselves to Henry and tell wonderful stories. Many writers say the best thing you can be is a good listener. In Henry Kisor's case, that means reading lips. Henry is deaf. He says that helped when talking with crew members.
They opened up to me because I think they felt that because I had sometimes had a hard time connecting with other people. They have the same experience too with certain kinds of passengers. And I think they were grateful to have someone who was interested in them for themselves, not just as scenery and the railroad.
In his book, there are funny and touching stories that relate to his lack of hearing, but it's not a book about a deaf person riding a train. The pages reveal the people, the scenery, and the experiences that make this ride so special.
The time.
That's what appeals to me most about a long train journey. Despite the railroad's history of diminishing time and increasing speed, time on today's long-distance train no longer means haste, at least for me. Exactly the reverse, in fact. Train time means large blocks of leisure to rest, to read a book from cover to cover, to write a few thousand words on my laptop computer in the warm privacy of a sleeper compartment, or simply to wool gather, letting my imagination carry me where it will.
Debbie Kisor often does the reading at appearances in bookstores. She also helps Henry talk with other people when they have trouble understanding him or when he has trouble reading their lips. He doesn't know sign language, never learned it because it came along after he was already reading lips.
I don't think of myself as being an interpreter, although I know I am one. But when you asked how we communicate, we've been married for 33 years. So basically, he just reads my mind.
Just by buying a ticket and taking a train, you are signing up for more than just a ride from place to place. In his book, Kisor unveils what most rail fans already know.
As a train is an adventure in itself. Not just getting from point A to point B. I think Americans have forgotten how to travel. They just want to be there. But when you take the time to see America from a low level, it's a wonderful experience.
The Zephyr cuts a picturesque swath through the country. Any spot aboard is pretty amazing, but the best seat in the house is usually off limits. Riding in the cab is an extremely rare treat.
The territory that you run over is going to be different than probably any territory you've ever seen. Unless, of course, you're up in Montana or some parts of Idaho. You might see similar territory, but it's just, it's unique in that way. You're up steep grades with canyons, and tunnels are cut in there just making cuts for you, and it's quite unique. You follow the Colorado River for 156 miles. It's quite a unique route.
When all that scenery makes you hungry, head to the dining car. Unlike the airlines, the food here is fresh and prepared by onboard chefs who use their own recipes. Amtrak tries hard to use regional ingredients whenever possible. Since the fish is fresh out of the streams in Colorado, fish it is.
If there's anybody that did not get a reservation that would like to have dinner, we do have seating available at this time.
As a passenger, you have some accommodation options. You can curl up in one of the coach seats, which can get a little cramped when you're trying to sleep. Then again, these folks don't seem to be having any trouble. You can also book a sleeper compartment, which, although compact, offers almost all the comforts of home in a pint-sized space. And when you awake, there are always more amazing things to see out the window, places only a train can take you. For Henry Kisor, there is no such thing as riding the Zephyr too many times. There's always something new out the window or inside the train.
What is next for us?
That is a good question. I don't know yet.
Henry wants to retire and write, and I won't let him.
So let me write, she doesn't want me to retire.
Like a lot of us, trains inspire him, and like a lot of us, they always seem to be calling him to climb aboard.
So from time to time, when they had light displayed the night, and a quartet of diesel follow the path with pleasant freight for the west coast. I want to be on that train.
If you want to read more about the Zephyr, pick up Henry's book, Zephyr, Tracking a Dream Across America. Thanks for being with us, and please join us next time for more Tracks Ahead.